I thought my son was just hungrier than usual when he asked me to pack 2 lunches. It didn't seem like a big deal. I even teased him about it. But then, a few days later, his teacher called. She said a girl in his class had fainted, and my son, he gave her the second lunch, the one I packed, thinking he was just having a growth spurt. I asked him why he did that. He looked at me and said, "She eats erasers when she's hungry. Her mom sleeps all day." I didn't know what to say. My chest just tightened. My 9-year-old had noticed something no one else had. That night, I couldn't stop thinking about it, about her, about what kind of life makes a child eat erasers to stop the hunger. The next morning, I packed 2 lunches again, but this time I wrote a note and slipped it into the second bag. When Zane came home, I asked him if she got it. He said, "Yeah, I gave it to her. And now, her mom wants to meet you." It was just a regular Tuesday morning. My alarm went off at 6:30, same as always. I dragged myself out of bed and tiptoed down the hallway, trying not to wake Zane too early. The kitchen smelled faintly like the coffee I had set on a timer the night before. I moved through the motions like I did every day: toast in the toaster, eggs on the stove, lunchbox on the counter, the quiet hum of morning life. Zane came shuffling in with his wild bedhead and that lopsided smile I've loved since he was a baby. He plopped down at the table and rubbed his eyes with the back of his hand. "You want cereal or eggs today?" I asked, flipping a pancake. "Pancakes," he mumbled, barely looking up. He was always a slow starter in the mornings, but he came alive by the time we got to the car. After breakfast, I handed him his lunchbox like I did every day. As I was zipping it shut, he hesitated. His voice was small but clear. "Mom, can you pack 2 lunches today?" I paused. I looked at him, waiting for a smirk or a punchline. None came. "2 lunches," I said. "Since when do you eat like a sumo wrestler?" He laughed a little, but he wasn't joking. "It's not for me." I didn't ask too many questions. Maybe he was trying to swap lunches with a friend or donate to a class project. It wasn't that unusual. Zane has always been generous. Last year, he gave away his Halloween candy to a kid who didn't get to go trick-or-treating. The year before that, he saved up his allowance for 2 months just to buy socks for a winter clothing drive. I figured this was just another one of those moments, so I packed an extra sandwich, tossed in another juice box, and added a second bag of apple slices. I didn't think too hard about it. I buckled him into the back seat and drove him to school like usual. We talked about science class, about how his friend Mateo got in trouble for putting rubber bands on the teacher's chair. He laughed like it was the funniest thing in the world. Everything felt normal. The same route, the same goodbye hug, the same "love you, buddy" as he slammed the car door and disappeared through the school's front doors. The rest of my day went by without incident. I went to work, answered emails, picked up groceries. I had a meeting that ran late and barely made it home before the school bus. When Zane came in, I asked how his day was. He said, "Good," and went straight for his Legos. I didn't press. That was his usual after-school rhythm. That night, after dinner, I packed his lunch for the next day like always. I even made a mental note to grab more juice boxes. But as I set the lunchbox on the counter, I kept thinking about that second lunch. Who was it for? Did the kid like it? Was it a thank you thing or something else? I was curious but not overly worried. In my mind, it was just one of those things kids do. Little gestures, small kindnesses. I was proud of him, quietly. Not just for sharing, but for thinking of someone else without needing credit for it. Zane was already in bed when I peeked into his room. He was curled up under his galaxy print blanket, his hair still a mess from the day. I leaned in to kiss his forehead. "Hey," I whispered. "Did you give the second lunch away today?" His eyes were already half closed, but he nodded. "Yeah," he said softly. "She needed it." That was the first time I felt something different in his voice. Not playful, not proud, just matter of fact, like this was something he had thought about for a while, something he felt responsible for. I turned off his lamp and walked back to the kitchen. I stood there for a few seconds, staring at the counter. Something told me this wasn't just a random act of kindness. There was more to it. I could feel it, like a small weight settling into my chest. It was the kind of feeling you don't know how to name yet, but you know you'll be carrying it with you for a while, and I had no idea how right I was. 2 days later, I got a phone call at work. It was around noon. I remember because I had just reheated my coffee for the third time and sat down to answer emails. The number was from Zane's school. My stomach did that little flip it always does when a call comes in during the school day. "Hello, this is Elira," I answered, already bracing myself. "Hi, this is Miss Callan, Zane's homeroom teacher. I just wanted to let you know something that happened today. Everything's fine, Zane is fine, but there was an incident in class I thought you should hear about." I held my breath. She continued, "A student in Zane's class fainted this morning. Her name is Amira. She hasn't been eating lunch, and it looks like she hasn't been eating much at home either. Zane gave her the extra lunch you packed." I was silent for a second. "He gave her the second lunch?" I repeated. "Yes," Miss Callan said. "And it wasn't the first time. He told us he's been bringing it for her all week." I sat there holding the phone, staring at my computer screen while her words echoed in my head. I heard the teacher say something about contacting the school counselor, about looking into Amira's situation, but I could barely process it. All I could picture was Zane walking into school every morning, carrying that second lunch like a quiet mission, like it was just part of his day. After I hung up, I didn't move for a long time. I thought about Amira, a little girl I didn't even know. I tried to imagine what it must feel like to be that hungry. I kept thinking about her fainting, her body giving out because no one was giving her what she needed. That night, I waited until after dinner to bring it up with Zane. I didn't want to overwhelm him or make him feel like he was in trouble. He was sitting at the table, drawing something with his colored pencils, tongue sticking out a little like it always did when he was focused. "Hey, Zane," I said gently, "can I ask you something?" "Yeah," he said without looking up. "Did you give your lunch to Amira today?" He stopped drawing. His pencil hovered just above the paper. Then he nodded. "Why?" I asked. "Why didn't you tell me?" He looked at me. His eyes weren't sad or scared. They were steady. "She eats erasers," he said, "when she's hungry." I blinked. "What?" "She eats the ends of her pencil erasers and sometimes paper. I saw her do it one day during math. I asked her why, and she said her stomach hurt." I felt my throat tighten. "Does she not bring food from home?" He shook his head. "She said her mom sleeps all day. There's nothing in the fridge sometimes." I sat down across from him. I didn't even know what to say at first. "You've been bringing her food all week?" I asked. Zane nodded again. "She tries to hide when she's hungry, but I can tell. She gets quiet and holds her stomach. I just wanted to help." I reached across the table and placed my hand over his. His fingers were smudged with orange and green pencil dust. "You did help," I said. "More than you know." He smiled, a little unsure, like he didn't quite understand why this moment felt so heavy to me. But he wasn't doing it for recognition. He wasn't looking for praise. He just saw someone who needed something, and he gave what he had. That night, after he went to bed, I sat alone in the kitchen. Thought about all the things we teach our children, how to tie their shoes, say please and thank you, cross the street safely. But we don't always realize what they're learning on their own. Quiet things, brave things. Zane had seen hunger, not just empty lunchboxes, but the kind of hunger that makes a child eat pieces of rubber just to get through the day. And without being asked, without being told, he had done something about it. It wasn't just about a sandwich or a juice box. It was about seeing someone who had been invisible to the rest of the world and choosing to feed her anyway. I didn't sleep much that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw her, Amira, sitting in a classroom somewhere with her head down, trying to focus on spelling words while her stomach twisted in knots. I imagined her hiding bites of erasers behind her notebook, pretending they were candy. I kept thinking about what kind of life makes a child resort to that. How many times she must have done it before someone noticed, or maybe no one ever did until my son did. The next morning, I moved slower than usual in the kitchen. Zane was still asleep upstairs. I poured coffee, then stood at the counter, staring at his empty lunchbox. I couldn't shake what he had said. "She eats erasers." It wasn't just the words that haunted me. It was how casually he had said them, like he'd already accepted that this was just how the world works sometimes, like this wasn't shocking anymore. I opened the fridge and began pulling things out. Turkey slices, cheese, apple wedges, carrot sticks, crackers. Then I packed his lunch, as I always did. But this time, I reached for a second container and started again. Same food, same care, same size portions. Only this time, I paused and reached for a sticky note from the drawer. I held the pen for a moment before writing anything, unsure of what to say to a little girl I'd never met. Then I wrote, "Hi, Amira. I hope you enjoy lunch today. If you ever need more, just let me know. You are not alone. Zane's mom." It was short. It wasn't perfect, but I hoped it would feel like a hand reaching out through the chaos. I folded the note and slipped it between the crackers and apple slices in the second container. Then I closed the lunchbox and placed both in Zane's backpack. He came downstairs a few minutes later, rubbing his eyes, yawning. "Two lunches again?" I asked, pretending to keep it casual. He nodded and pulled on his sneakers. "This time," I said, handing him the bag. "Make sure she gets it. And make sure she knows it's from me." Zane gave me a small smile, the kind he wears when he understands something deeply but doesn't have the words to explain it. "She'll know," he said. I dropped him off at school, same as usual. But this time, as he walked away from the car, I watched him a little longer. His backpack looked heavier, his steps slower. I wondered what it felt like for him to carry that kind of quiet responsibility each day. He wasn't just bringing food, he was carrying someone else's burden with him. When I got back home, I opened my laptop but couldn't focus on work. I kept thinking about what to do next. I wanted to help, but I didn't want to overstep. I didn't know Amira's mother. I didn't know their story. But I knew this. No child should ever have to depend on another child to meet their basic needs. Later that afternoon, when Zane came home from school, I didn't ask right away. I waited for him to settle in. He pulled out his homework, poured himself a glass of milk, and finally looked up at me with a smile. "She liked it," he said. "The food?" He nodded. "But the note, too. She read it twice." That was all I needed to hear. It landed. It meant something. I thought that would be the end of it. I was prepared to keep packing food as long as it was needed. No recognition, no response, just a quiet act of support from one family to another. But then, Zane said something that stopped me cold. "She gave the note to her mom," he said, "and now her mom wants to meet you." I blinked. "She does?" "Yeah," he said, like it was the most normal thing in the world. "She told Amira to say thank you." For a moment, I didn't know what to say. I wasn't sure what I had expected, but it wasn't this. I had pictured a silent connection, something unspoken that would stay in the background. But now the curtain was pulling back. There was another layer to this story, and it was coming directly toward me. It wasn't just about a hungry child anymore. It was about her mother, and whatever was waiting inside that conversation. The next morning, I sent Zane to school with another lunch and another note. This time, it simply said, "I'd love to meet you whenever you're ready. I'm here." I didn't expect a reply. I didn't know what I was inviting exactly, but I knew I couldn't turn away now. If someone reached back through that space between us, I needed to be there to meet them. 3 days later, Zane came home with a folded piece of notebook paper in his backpack. It was tucked between his math book and his pencil pouch. When I opened it, I saw just a few lines written in shaky handwriting. No name, no return address, just, "Thank you for feeding my daughter. I'm sorry I haven't been able to do better. I'm embarrassed, but I want to talk. I'll be at the school gate Friday afternoon. If you can come, I'd be grateful." I stared at those words for a long time. There was no punctuation, no signature, just raw honesty. Pain wrapped in apology, hope masked by shame. And underneath all of it, the same thing I felt the day Zane first told me about Amira. Someone trying to do their best in a world that didn't make it easy. When Friday came, I left work early. I didn't tell anyone why. I just knew I needed to be there. I arrived at the school 10 minutes before the last bell. I stood by the gate pretending to scroll through my phone, but really just trying to breathe. Parents trickled in. Car engines idled. Kids burst through the doors, laughing, yelling, backpacks bouncing. I spotted Zane right away. He waved when he saw me and came running. "Is she here?" I asked. He looked over his shoulder. "Yeah, that's her." She stood back near the fence, half shadowed by a tree. She looked younger than I expected. Maybe early 30s, but tired in a way that added years. Her clothes were clean but worn. She held her hands together tightly in front of her, like she wasn't sure if she was allowed to be here. I walked toward her slowly. She met me halfway. "Hi," I said. She nodded. You must be Zane's mom. I'm Alara. She hesitated, then extended her hand. Talia. We stood there for a moment, both unsure how to begin. Then she spoke, her voice low and tight. I didn't know what else to do. I didn't want to ask for help. I'm not doing great. I nodded, letting her speak at her own pace. I lost my job 6 months ago. I've been doing overnight cleaning work, but it barely covers rent. I sleep during the day because it's the only time I can. I keep thinking things will get better, but every month it just gets harder. Sometimes we don't even have bread in the house. She looked down, ashamed. I didn't speak right away. I let the silence hold the weight of what she said, because it deserved to be heard. I'm so sorry, I finally said. I had no idea. I don't think anyone knew. She shrugged. You weren't supposed to. I've been trying to hold it together. But Amira's been quieter lately. She won't tell me when she's hungry. I didn't know she was fainting. I didn't know it had gotten that bad. She's a strong girl, I said. So is her mother. Talia's eyes filled, but she blinked the tears back. She wasn't ready to fall apart in public. I respected that. I don't want pity, she said. It's not pity, I replied. It's community. We all need someone. You don't have to do this alone. She looked up, and for the first time, her face softened. I didn't think people like you existed, she said. I smiled. I didn't think kids like Zane existed either, but here we are. She laughed just a little, like her chest hadn't allowed that kind of sound in a while. It was soft but real. We exchanged numbers before she left. Nothing dramatic, no promises or handouts, just connection, an open door. Zane stood beside me, watching the whole thing. As we walked to the car, he looked up at me and asked, Is Amira going to be okay now? I didn't pretend to have the answer, but I said, She's not invisible anymore. That's a good start. And for the first time that week, I felt like we were all standing on steadier ground. It's been a few weeks since I met Talia at the school gate. Life hasn't transformed overnight, but something has shifted. A thread has been tied between our families, one that didn't exist before. We're not strangers anymore. Amira still gets a second lunch packed in Zane's bag every morning. Some days she eats it at school. Other days she brings it home. I never ask where it goes. I just make sure it's there. Crackers, fruit, a sandwich, something sweet when we have extra. I still write little notes sometimes, but they're simpler now. A smiley face, a you've got this. Zane says she keeps them. Talia and I text a few times a week. We don't talk about everything, but we talk. She tells me when she's working late or when she got a few extra hours cleaning offices. I let her know when I find a grocery sale or a meal assistance program. I don't offer charity. I offer options. I offer space. I remind her that she's not alone. The first Saturday after we met, Talia brought Amira to the park. I brought Zane. The kids played while we sat on the bench, quiet at first. Then we started talking. It wasn't about money or hardship that day. It was about favorite cartoons, picky eaters, old family recipes. We laughed once or twice. It felt normal. It felt like healing in progress. Zane has changed too, but not in a way you'd notice unless you're paying attention. He listens harder now. He watches people more closely. He started bringing extra granola bars in his backpack, just in case anyone forgets lunch. He doesn't talk about it much. He just does it. One night while I was folding laundry, he came into the room and sat on the floor next to me. Mom, he said, do you think people can get better just because someone believes in them? I stopped folding. I think that's exactly how people get better. He nodded. I think so too. It's a small story in the grand scheme of things. A second lunch, a handwritten note, a boy noticing a girl who looked too tired, too quiet, too invisible. But that's how change starts, not always in headlines or heroics. Sometimes it's in a juice box and a sandwich, passed across a lunch table by a child who saw someone hurting and refused to look away. This experience didn't just make me proud of my son. It made me think differently about the way we all move through the world. How easy it is to miss someone who is struggling. How quickly we judge without knowing the weight someone else is carrying. And how powerful it is when one person decides to care, even when it's not their job. Zane reminded me that we don't need to have everything figured out to make a difference. We just need to pay attention, to act when we can, to speak when silence becomes too heavy. Talia is still working nights, but she's saving. She applied for a support program through the school. It's not perfect, but it's something. She told me last week that she made spaghetti for Amira, and they ate together at the kitchen table. It was the first time in months. Amira is still quiet, but now she draws more in class. She laughs at Zane's jokes. Her cheeks look fuller. Her eyes are brighter. She doesn't eat erasers anymore, and I still pack that second lunch. Because somewhere out there, someone needs to know they're seen, that someone is watching out for them. That kindness still exists in a world that too often forgets how much it matters. Zane didn't just feed a hungry girl. He reminded her that someone cared enough to see her. And he reminded me that the smallest act of compassion can echo farther than we'll ever know. If this story touched you, share it. Maybe someone out there needs to hear that kindness still matters, that even the smallest act of care can change someone's day or their life. Leave a comment below. I'd love to know what you think or hear about a time when someone's kindness made a difference for you. And if you believe in stories like this, real ones, quiet ones, ones that remind us of our humanity, please subscribe to the channel. There's more to tell. Thanks for watching, and don't forget to pack a little kindness into your day.